Hi everybody, welcome back to public speaking, part 2 of our persuasive speaking lecture. So if you haven't watched it, you need to watch part 1 to make sure that you understand your topic, and most importantly, you understand your thesis, what your thesis should be, how it should be structured, what type of thesis you're going to use, and also what is your objective. Just a quick recap. So obviously you have to select your topic. Secondly, you need to figure out what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to convince? Or are you trying to actuate? And then you need to determine what type of thesis statement fits what you're trying to do. So it's either going to be a statement of fact, value, or policy. Make sure that you know that before moving on to what we're going to talk about in this lecture. It's really, really important, primarily because your thesis is going to be a primary part of this 4-step argumentation model. This model is called the Toulmin model of argumentation, and it was designed by a scholar named Stephen Toulmin. Stephen Toulmin was an English scholar of English, so a British scholar of English, as well as a philosopher. He was primarily interested in probability and looking at how we can determine how strong somebody feels, how confident somebody feels about their argument based on their word choice and the way they structure their argument. So through his research, through his thoughts, he developed this model of analyzing an argument. It's really a 5-step model, but for this class you only really need to know the 4. Qualifiers would be the 5th step, and they can get really, really complicated, so we don't need to worry about them for the time being. So we're using the Toulmin model of argumentation because it is an effective method for rhetorical analysis. So if you remember from the earlier modules, rhetoric is the artful use of language to shape the heart, the mind, or the will of some human or human enterprise. So as you all are trying to persuade your audience, you are using language artfully to shape the heart, the mind, or the will of some human or human enterprise. You are rhetoricians. You're engaging in rhetoric, and you are using your speech to achieve a particular means to either to alter your audience's beliefs, attitudes, values, or actions. So you need to be very precise and purposeful about your argument so that you are A, getting your audience to where you want them to go, but B, you are being reasonable and you're making a reasonable argument. The nice thing about the Toulmin model is it's really, really easy to just plug in different parts. You can use this model to analyze an argument, to analyze a political speech, to pick things apart and kind of determine the strength or the quality of that overall argument. And that's what I'm going to be looking for you to do with your persuasive argument. I want you to write your argument out before writing your speech, before engaging in the organizational pattern. I want you to write out your argument so that you can analyze it with a critical eye and you can determine for yourself, is it a reasonable, worthwhile argument? Does it somehow highlight something important about what's going on? So in order to do that, we need to start with step 1. And according to Toulmin, this is going to be our claim. For this class, your claim is going to simply be your thesis statement. So it's one simple declarative sentence that highlights the main theme of your speech, the main premise, the cornerstone, the through line, the primary idea that you're trying to get across with your persuasive speech. This is going to be in your claim. And if you're thinking about it, your thesis and your claim, if they're the same, that means your claim or your thesis needs to be a statement of fact, value, or policy. That's really, really important. If you don't have that set up right now, you don't know what your claim is going to be, pause this video, go back, rewatch the thesis video, so part 1 of this lecture, and come back to this when you have a clear and concise thesis statement. Now, once you've done that, once you have your claim, once you have your thesis, I want you to start to think about where your idea has come from. Where did this claim come from? And when we're doing that, we are thinking about or analyzing data. Now, this is one form of evidence, but it's going to be a very unique form of evidence because it is the evidence that our claim is rooted in. It's the genesis of our idea. So it could be a personal observation, a documentary that we watched, a movie that we watched, a conversation that we had with a friend, an article that we read, something that we saw on social media. Any one of those things can be the genesis of your claim. But I'm looking for you to really take a step back and to analyze that and to look at it, because the data of an argument, according to Toulmin, is actually really, really important, specifically because if you were to be in a debate or be in an argument, you need to be able to explain every single aspect of your argument and to understand how it all flows together. So you have to understand your data, you have to understand where that's coming from, and ultimately you need to be able to answer a question about your data, about where that information has come from. Where did that claim come from? What made you feel that way? So to get a little bit more academic with it, if you are thinking of your data as the genesis of an idea, it's the evidence that your claim is rooted in, your thesis is then going to build from that. So for example, if we are talking about, say, the theory of evolution, and we are talking about, or making a claim about whether that is true or false, it exists, it doesn't exist, it's accurate, inaccurate, whatever that claim might be, if I'm talking about the theory of evolution, my data inherently is going to be Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, which is a book that initially proposed this idea of evolution. It's the data, it's the seminal text, it's the first really major work that proposed this new idea about evolution and theorized that this is how life has advanced and how it became what it is today. So I need to be able to understand and argue why that data is valuable. Why are Charles Darwin's observations valuable? How do those observations link together to create a theory of evolution that is becoming a little bit more controversial as we progress? Then I would state my claim about whatever that is. So it's important to be able to understand my data, because if I am arguing with somebody, that's what they're going to respond to. They're going to respond to my claim as well. So one way to think about this is to think about your data as the structure, as the foundation of your house. Your foundation plays a really big role in the longevity and the strength of a building. But it's not necessarily the most important part. It's very important, but you can see buildings almost anywhere you look that maybe don't have really strong foundations, or have been standing for years and years and don't have a strong foundation, or don't have a foundation at all. They're just sitting on the ground, right? So the data, while it is very important, it is not the most important thing. You're probably not going to hear somebody say, my data is this. You're probably not going to see it in an argument, but you want to keep an eye out for it, because it's going to add an extra layer to the argument. But for you as a speaker, you want to be aware of it so that you can fully understand where your argument is coming from, so that you can propose your ideas in the best possible way. So if your data is the foundation of your house, your claim is your house. Your claim is built on top of that data. Now, those are only two primary parts of this model of argumentation, but we have to branch out. Our argument needs to grow. It needs to expand. And in order to do that, we need to link everything together. And we do this through warrants. Warrants are very, very complicated. They can be very, very complicated. But for this class, all I'm looking for you to do is to think about warrants as your links. It's how you connect the pieces of your argument, the pieces of your speech together. So specifically for this class, this would be your transitions. How do you link your ideas together? So from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, how do you link them together so that they flow and that they help your audience get to that final endpoint without thinking that you have very chunky ideas that are connected or maybe not connected in any way? Your warrants are going to be your bridges, your connections, your links from your different pieces of evidence to your points, to your main point, to your thesis, to your organizational pattern. You can think of it kind of like the glue that holds everything together. Now, I know it might sound a little bit weird, but you all have used warrants or critiqued somebody's use of warrants probably a number of times in the past. And you would do this by, say, you're having an argument with somebody and you're talking about topic A. The person you're arguing with brings up something we would call topic B that is completely unrelated to topic A, not even close to being the same thing. And you're sitting there and you say, well, hold on a second. Topic B is in no way connected to topic A. Why are we talking about this right now? What you're doing is you are essentially saying these things are not linked. There is no reason to talk about them. It is unreasonable to bring in topic B when we're talking about topic A. Let's focus on topic A. And what you're doing is you are attacking that warrant. You're attacking that link that the other person is trying to make between point A and point B. And now what you've done is you said, listen, this has nothing to do with it. Let's focus on this. And effectively what you've done is you've weakened that overall argument because you're realigning it with the primary focus of what you're trying to do. So you're not in a debate for this class, but you are writing an argument. And what you need to do is to be aware of how your warrants might impact the way your audience is going to receive your ideas. You need to think about, are they strong? Are they weak? Do my points and my pieces of evidence, does everything connect together nicely? Does it all flow? Does my research here contradict my research over here and super contradict my research over here? Or does all of my research flow together? Do all of my ideas flow together to give us one cohesive argument that is very strong and forceful? You analyze that by looking at the warrants and by looking at how everything is connected. Now, the last bit of the Toolman model that we need to be concerned about for this class is backing or evidence. So this is the outside evidence we bring in to support our argument. So for this particular speech, you need to have 8 outside sources. This is where you would do your research. You're going to bring that information from the outside. You're going to gather it together. You're going to dissect it, pick it apart, and ultimately use it or not for your speech. Now, backing is going to be a little bit different than data, because your data is going to be the piece of evidence that your argument is rooted on, that it's built on. But your backing is going to be all of the extra support that you bring in, really to bolster that idea. So to think back to the example used for Charles Darwin and the origin of species and the theory of evolution. If I'm making a claim about the theory of evolution, my data is the book On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. My backing would then be any current research that I bring in to support that. So while the data is evidence, it's different. The backing is going to be the most current, the strongest information, the strongest evidence that we can find to support our overall ideas and to lend strength to our overall argument. So if you're looking at this, it's a very simple way to break down almost any argument. What is their thesis? What's their primary point? What's their claim? Okay, what ideas is that claim rooted in? What evidence is that claim rooted in? Where did that claim come from? Who said it first? Who came up with that idea? Are they just sharing this idea, or is it something really unique and very powerful? You need to be able to answer that question. Then you have the warrants. So this is how do we link our ideas together. It's the glue that holds our argument together. And then we have backing, and our backing is all of our outside support that we use to really bolster our argument. Now, this brings us to the end of this particularly short lecture, but it is really, really important that you are able to break these ideas down. What I would like for you to do at this point, if you know your topic, you know your objective, you know your thesis, and you have gotten through your claim data and you're starting to think about how you're going to connect everything together, how you might transition, what I would like for you to do is get to your backing and start doing your research. I know this isn't how we always do it, but you should be doing your research before you start writing your speech. The research should guide your speech. You should not write your speech and then go find evidence that supports it. That's a very problematic and unethical way to do research. And it also, from a public speaking perspective, you might not be sharing the best ideas with your audience. Because if you go looking for that one piece of evidence that supports your main idea, you might find it, but you also haven't examined the 999 other ideas that actually refute that one. So you, as an academic, need to do the research beforehand to help guide and to help write your argument and your speech. So now that you're finished with this lecture, start doing some research. Do some research before you watch the next lecture in this series. It will help a lot. don't start writing your speech just yet, because that's what's going to be talked about in the following lecture for this short lecture series. I hope that you all learned something really valuable about Toolman, but also about how to analyze arguments in your day-to-day life. Take care, everybody.